Begin in Lagos State, where President Muhammad Buhari will inaugurate some projects. His aircraft touched down at about 10 a.m. on Tuesday at the presidential wing of the Murtala Mohammed Airport, Lagos. The president was welcomed to the state by Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and some members of the Lagos State Executive Council. He later boarded a chopper to Lekki, where he is expected to inaugurate the multi-billion-dollar Dangote fertilizer plant. President Buhari is also expected to inspect the ongoing construction of the Dangote refinery as well as the Lekki deep sea port. Away from that, the bus rapid transport driver Andrew Nice, suspected of murdering 22-year-old fashion designer Oluwabamise Ayanwola, has been arraigned before Justice Sherifat Sonaike of the Lagos State High Court, sitting at the Tafawa Balewa Square. He pleaded not guilty to the offences of rape and murder of Miss Ayanwola in February 2022, as well as another rape incident of a young lady which occurred last November. Dr. Jide Martins, who is the Director of Public Prosecutions, represented Lagos State, while Ikechukwu Ezekwem represented the defendant. Another counsel, Ayo Ademiluyi, announces appearance for the Ayanwola family. The charges were read out in English language and interpreted to the defendant in pidgin English, as he told the court he didn't understand English very well. Trial dates have been fixed for May the 9th, 10th and 11th, 2022.
Inviting international observers, international forensic observers, international forensic pathologists to so conduct that pathology. It is the opinion, the report of that pathology that would be of use to us. And of course, the prosecution, although we are watching brief, we can only be seen and not be heard. The prosecution also said they will be available to employ video links, which are so about that. Wonderful enough, the late Bamise Ayanwola was so gallant enough, was so resolute enough to produce serious video evidence that will be useful in this subject. So, on a final note, the matter has now been adjourned to 9th, 10th, and 11th of May for trial, for full trial to commence.
Still on court matters, the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has struck out a motion on notice filed by Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi, seeking the stay of execution of a judgment removing him from office. Justice Inyang Ekwo struck out the motion earlier today following the withdrawal of the case by the plaintiffs in this suit. Celestina Area reports.
8 March 2022, David Umahi and Kelechi Ikwe had their candidacy as governor and deputy governor of Ebonyi State nullified by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Justice Inyang Ekwo held that having defected to the APC, Governor Umahi and his deputy cannot transfer the mandate of the PDP to the APC. Citing Section 221 of the Constitution, Justice Inyang Ekwo ordered the People's Democratic Party to immediately send names of replacement for Governor of Ebonyi State and his deputy to INEC so as to conduct fresh elections. The duo had then filed a motion on notice seeking a stay of execution of the judgment by the court, removing them from office. At the resumed sitting, Counsel to Umahi informed the court of the latest development with respect to appealing the court judgment. He subsequently sought to withdraw the motion for stay of execution earlier filed. In a short ruling upon the withdrawal of the motion, Justice Inyang Ekwo struck out the motion. The court held that the matter has already been instituted before the Court of Appeal and as such does not have any business in the Federal High Court.
That appeal has been entered and we tendered from the bar the certified true copy of the process issued by the court's registrar showing that appeal has been entered and appeal numbers therein indicated. So now the war and the fights and the prosecution of the matter is now in Court of Appeal. And so the motion for stay of execution filed here have been withdrawn and terminated.
The court declared the defection as unlawful, unconstitutional, null and void. It also ordered INEC to cease from recognizing them as governor and deputy governor of Ebonyi State. Celestina Area, TVC News, Abuja.
And the Federal High Court in Abuja has nullified the candidacy of 20 members of the Cross River State House of Assembly that defected from the People's Democratic Party to the ruling All Progressives Congress. Justice Taiwo in a judgment held that the lawmakers, having abandoned the political party that sponsored them to power ought to vacate their seats. There is more in this report.
It is barely 2 weeks after the Federal High Court nullified the candidacy of Governor and Deputy Governor of Ebonyi State over their defection to the APC. Now the Federal High Court Abuja, presided by Justice Taiwo, has again nullified the candidacy of 20 lawmakers for defecting from the party through which they were duly elected. The People's Democratic Party had instituted a suit against the lawmakers over their defection to the All Progressives Congress. In the judgment, the court held that the lawmakers, since they have abandoned the People's Democratic Party, which sponsored them to power, they should vacate their seats. The court also noted that the actions of the lawmaker in challenging the competency of the suit is feeble and constitutes an attempt to pull the wool over the eyes of the court.
This is another major decision upholding our constitutional provisions. The time for, resorting to the rule of law should now actually be welcomed.
Senior advocate of Nigeria, Michael Ezekwem, says his clients will appeal the judgment promptly.
Under Section 25A of the Court of Appeal Act, to appeal to the Court of Appeal, 90 days, and this being a final judgment under Section 150 and Section 151 of the Constitution, we don't need the leave of the court to appeal. It's an appeal as of right.
Parties that have lost their mandate over the defection of their members who were duly elected by them to political positions will see this judgment as a pathway to seek redress in court. Celestina Iria, TVC News, Abuja.
Meanwhile, armed policemen have taken over the Cross River State House of Assembly. According to reports, the policemen are drawn from the anti-kidnapping squad and regular policemen. They were also seen around the roads leading to the House of Assembly. Meanwhile, movement into the Assembly complex on Diamond Hill has been restricted. The presence of the policemen followed the Federal High Court Abuja ruling on Monday, which sacked 20 lawmakers in the state for defecting from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress. And the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Mohammed, says there is need to promote uniformity and efficiency in the quality of justice delivery as democracy thrives upon strict adherence to the rule of law. He made these statements at the opening ceremony of a workshop and training for judges and Grand Caddies at the National Judicial Institute in Abuja. TVC News Judiciary correspondent Celestina Iria reports on this.
It is the first workshop and training for judges and Grand Caddies in the year 2022. Participants at this workshop will deliberate on aspects of judicial sector reforms which will strengthen judicial and governance institutions, structures and processes. They will also consider effective case management in criminal cases, as well as building a formidable bar-bench relationship. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Mohammed, who declares the conference open, is emphatic that democracy thrives on respect for the rule of law. Its principles also advocate the independence of the judiciary, the doctrine of separation of powers, guarantee of fundamental rights and the freedom of expression, and promoting public confidence in the administration of justice. He points out that the law can only be optimally practiced in Nigeria if the fundamental principles enshrined in the Constitution is manned by upright judicial officers.
The other arm of government vested with administrative powers, such as we must ensure that the interests of the powerful must always be reconciled with those of the voiceless ones.
The judiciary today would not have been possible without the input and industry of our dedicated and competent judicial officers. Distinguished practical ladies and gentlemen, it cannot be overemphasized that the judiciary is an indispensable partner in ensuring stability of the party, particularly as we are approaching an election year.
These refresher calls would help these participants in enlightening the role of the judiciary in promoting good governance in Nigeria.
Among other things, this conference are for members of the bench an opportunity for sober reflection, a chance to have close interaction with brother judges and deliberate on key issues that reposition the judiciary. Celestina Area, TVC News, Abuja.
To health matters, Nigeria has revised its international travel protocol, and this will take effect from Monday, the 4th April 2022. According to the revised guild, inbound passengers arriving in Nigeria will no longer be required to take a pre-departure PCR COVID-19 test. Upon arrival, samples of fully vaccinated passengers will be taken at the airport for rapid antigen test by the NCDC within the arrival hall of the airport. Passengers who are also unvaccinated or partially vaccinated shall take a COVID-19 PCR test 48 hours before departure or do a day 2 and day 7 test on arrival. On safety measures, the Presidential Steering Committee strongly recommended the use of face masks in enclosed environments, while the use of face masks is now discretional in open spaces.
Rules that apply to fully vaccinated adults also apply to children aged 10 to 18. They will not be required to have a pre-arrival PCR test, but will have a sample taken at the arrival hall.
If global cases continue to decline and there is no threat of an emerging new variant that is more virulent, then effective from April 4th, 2022, inbound passengers to Nigeria are no longer required to carry out COVID-19 PCR test before they board. However, on arrival, rapid testing or samples will be taken on arrival. And passengers who are not vaccinated or who are partially vaccinated will need to do the 48-hour PCR test before departure, as well as pay for a PCR test on day 2 as well as day 7.
The oil spill that occurred in a wellhead in OML 150 affecting 9 communities in Sapele and Okwe council areas of Delta State has been linked to equipment failure. The people in that community are now calling on government to prevail on the oil company to alleviate their losses. This call is coming more than a month after the incident. Ikechukwu reports.
Waiting here for the arrival of the representatives of the regulatory agencies and the oil company are members of the communities in Okwe and Sapele local government areas affected by the crude oil spill. After more than 5 hours, the team arrived. The joint investigation team had a brief meeting with members of the affected communities over what might have caused the spill. Though the team declined to speak to journalists on the outcome of the investigation, the affected communities are quick to reveal the finding of the team.
From the investigation so far, it is very, very obvious that the cause of the spillage is as a result of equipment failure on the part of the wellhead. So that is the cause of the oil spillage.
Meanwhile, the people of the affected communities are still appealing for aids from relevant agencies as the spill has damaged their source of livelihood.
Since last month, February 2022, we have been experiencing there's no water from that community, and the water is the source of our livelihood. That's water we drank. Up till now, there's no water, no relief material, nothing whatsoever. So I want to please beg the federal government to come to our aid of rescue, that they should bring relief material to clean the rivers and do the needful in paying compensation. Purification created in the waterways. You can see it that all of these vegetations are stained with crude oil, and the impact of it is that there will be dieback of all this vegetation, and then water has been polluted, implying that the people may need to now go and source for alternative water. This is where they use for their drinking. This is what they use for their domestic activities.
So we are calling on the government to intervene so that they should come and attend to the issue.
Now that the investigation visit is done, next is to know the commensurate actions to compensate the communities and save the environment from further degradation. Ikenna Amechi, TVC News, Saple, Delta State.
And today is World Water Day. It's a day aimed at bringing the attention of nations to the global water crisis and negative repercussions of contaminated water on the human species. Core focus of World Water Day is to support the achievement of Sustainable Development Goal 6, Water and Sanitation for All, by 2030. The theme for this year's commemoration is Groundwater, Making Invisible Visible, focuses on exploring, protecting and sustainably using groundwater, which is central to surviving and adapting to climate change and meeting the needs of a growing population. Let's have our discuss and shed more light into this development. Joining us is an environmental conservationist, Temitope Okuno. Thank you so much for joining us on the media news. How the world is facing dirty water, floods, and scarcity. What do you think is needed for effective solutions?
Thank you very much for having me. Happy World Water Day to you. So yes, it's World Water Day and everyone is celebrating to throw more light on scarcity, the pollution of fresh water and the exploitation by human activities such as excessive pollution and groundwater contaminating waste, which are mainly because of the increasing population and economic growth. Well, I'd like to start by saying that it is important to note that water covers almost 70% of our planet, and fresh water only amounts to about 3% of it, and which means out of this, 2/3 is frozen, inaccessible, and unavailable to use. But we need the fresh water to drink, do domestic things, household use, irrigate our farmland and gardens. But right now, billions of people do not have access to fresh water or even safe drinking water across the world. And about 2 billion people as well find it very hard, difficult to find fresh water for at least 1 month of the year. And because of that, we know that the value of water is priceless. And when we talk about water, we cannot talk about water without mentioning the Sustainable Development Goal 6, which is sanitation and water. Now, there's an urgent action to ensure safe, clean, drinkable water and sanitation in the next few years, by 2030. Our inaction to take these adequate measures or steps to preserve our little freshwater table now, it will jeopardize the valuable resource for our children and in the future. Now, the team says that groundwater, it's an invisible, making invisible, making the invisible visible, throws more light and visibility on the importance of groundwater. Many people do not understand what, the concept of the groundwater is.
Yeah, that's what I'm actually trying to ask you, that, you need to talk to us about what it's actually meant to, or the need to now preserve this groundwater all over the world, especially, let's even bring it home in Nigeria.
Okay, so there's what we call the freshwater table. It's just between the rocky ground below and our soil. Now, so many people do a lot to pollute that freshwater table through pesticides, use, toxic dissemination of chemicals into the water and all of that. Though it's invisible, but its impact is actually very visible everywhere. It is out of sight, but can be likened to a hidden treasure that enriches our lives. So what can be done? We need to make sure that people are enlightened, number one. We need them to be enlightened on the fact that, yes, we have this very little or percentage of drinking water or fresh water available. We need to keep it safe. We need to keep it, for future use for the next generation. We need to reduce toxicity into that system. Now, many people who farm today do not realize that the chemicals they pour on their farmland or their gardens or the chemicals from industrial companies are actually telling on the freshwater reserve. And for every chemical you pour into your soil, thinking that it will go somewhere, but nothing actually goes anywhere. It goes somewhere. And when it goes that way, it means that you are, contaminating the little water reserve that we have.
I'm trying to understand the logic behind it, because we're made to understand that the earth is so, so beautifully produced, created, that anything you pour on the ground, it could be water, it could be, no matter how dirty it is, it has the capacity or capability to filter, to filter it and maintain pure water deep down the ground. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so why are we worried about polluting what is invisible that we are trying to make visible at the end of the day?
But do you know that below the soil, we have water. We have water below the soil. And it is because of that logic that I would recommend and advise. In fact, the UN also advises that the pollution that is being dropped on our soil should be managed. Now, we know the soil filters and all of that, but do you know how many people we are in the world? Let's just come to Lagos, for example. We have like 22 million people, and in Nigeria we have over 200. Now, when we have a large percentage of people doing the same thing and destroying the top layer of our soil, it would definitely get to the water. And apart from that, there's something we do at the foundation. We do a lot of cleanups and use this opportunity to relate this information to them or sensitize the community people. There's so many waste being dropped into the ocean, causing a lot of animal and aquatic life being endangered, and invariably we are endangered as well. Now, if you look at my eyes this morning, just before I came on to your show, I had a little problem itching and all of that. That was because I ate crayfish. Now, crayfish is something that I've adopted into my meal so that I can cut down on a lot of toxic things that is added into our meal, because I grow my own food. But then again, if something as little as the crayfish is being affected because of pollution, then we know that we are in danger. Right? People pour in a lot of things into the water, into the ocean. We come in every Saturday to clean up and sensitize the communities. A whole lot of aquatic animals are dying. People are getting affected. Human health is getting affected. The children particularly are getting affected. If we're not looking at the climate changes, right? We should start looking at the human health and the effects it has.
Absolutely, which is the bottom line.
Particularly our food.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So if you look after our climate, look after the cosmos, everyone will also be in good condition. I believe that's your point.
Yes.
Environmental conservationist, Temitope Okono, thank you so much for your insight, and sorry about your side.
Thank you.